Right, let's review and look at the requirements for Internal Standard 3.4. We're looking at psychological theories in the field. The whole purpose behind this assessment is saying, look, we can come up with these psychological theories, but a theory is only as good as its application. So how can we take psychological theory and use it in some way in the real world? And that's what you have to show you understand in this internal standard. Right, so this is 4 credits. Now the resource title is Studying with Smartphones. Leading into this assessment, we were looking at a whole bunch of theories of memory and learning and how they might have been influenced by smartphone technology. Things like working memory, cognitive load, the multi-store model, etc. Right, so we'll quickly go through the achievement criteria, and then I'll explain the task. Alrighty, so if you're aiming for an achieved, you have to discuss how 2 theories are applied in one field of psychology. This is different to level 2 if you did this internal last year. Pretty simple, so explain what 2 theories are and how they've been used in one field of psychology. Fields of psychology could be educational or clinical. Merit, you need to do the same thing, so discuss, so what are the theories and how and why are they used, right? That's your discussion. One field, plus you need to critique the impact those theories have had in that particular field of psychology and use studies and theories in your critique. Alright, so when you're explaining the impact. Alrighty, now if you're aiming for excellence, you still need to do all the same things. Discuss 2 theories in one field of psychology, critique the impact, use studies and theories, and assess the effectiveness of the application of the theory. And similar to other standards, you need to explain the impact of the application of the theory on wider society. Now, like many things in some of these assessments, this last part kind of irritates me because what you're doing with the discuss how theories are applied in a field of psychology, well, the field of psychology is the wider society. So what you're really looking for here is aim for an additional example of the theory being used in maybe a different field of psychology. That would be where I would begin. Alrighty, so let's now look at the task sheet and break this down a little bit further because you have 2 options. Right, so we've been looking at theories of learning, and so for example, schema theory, these theories we've been looking at can be equally relevantly applied to 2 different fields of psychology, educational or clinical. Right, I've narrowed it down to these 2 to make it easier for you. So an educational psychologist use psychological theory to help students. Clinical psychologists use psychological theories to help treat psychological disorders like depression or PTSD. So you can skip ahead this if you want to do clinical psychology, or if you are doing clinical psychology, I'll explain the educational psychology component first and address the frequent questions. So what you have to do here, if you're doing educational psychology, is imagine you're an educational psychologist paid by college to review one or more of their policies and practices. So these could be the no visible smartphone, prep, classroom design, any general teaching practices, strategies, or anything else to do with schools, right? These are just some guides. It can be anything. Alrighty, and so the point here is you are trying to demonstrate you understand how an educational psychologist would use theories like working memory model or cognitive load in advising a school on their policies. That's exactly what an educational psychologist does. So you're going to write a review for college, okay, improving teaching and learning, and we're going to aim for 3 key points. Now some of you might go into heaps of detail on 2, and then I might say that's fine for 2, move to the second part. Alright, and so these are some of the theories you're going to choose from. So this internal is going to be broken into, for this educational psychologists, into 2 parts, the creative and the critical. The creative is what you're going to need to do for the achieved criteria. So you write your review and recommendation, right? So that's your 3 points here about reviewing the strategies, okay? And then make sure your strategies or your recommendations, your policies, you're using 2 or more psychological theories, right, to write those, okay? And then you're consistent with how the theories have been applied in the field. So actually what you also need to do is to say, look, here's how Christ College, you need to change your policy based on smartphones because of cognitive load theory. Here's why. And explain cognitive load theory and give me the reason. Or you say, college, your policy regarding homework is good because of the multi-store model. Here's why. All right, and then you also then just need to cite and find some example of how these have actually been applied in the field. And this could be just a quick reference or an example, a quotation from somewhere, or finding evidence that that you can see how these theories have been actually used by other schools. And this is enough to get the achieved, right? Your 4 credits. Now, aiming for merit or excellence, you'll need to add the critical analysis of the theory. It's too hard to do this critique all in the creative part of it. All right, so what you have to do is explain one way each theory has had an impact in educational psychology, and this is where you're going to have to do some research here. For example, schema theory had an influence on reading programs and reading comprehension programs. Levels of processing has been influential in teaching strategies. So you'll need to do some research here and find ways that the theory has impacted educational psychology. Then assess the effectiveness of the application of the theories. And I would try to, the way we assess the effectiveness of anything in psychology is using studies. All right, so see if you can find some studies to assess. So you've found the application here, or you've found examples of how the theory's been applied, and then you're going, well, was that really that effective? And then I've put here 3 ways. At least 1 or 2 would be good, but aim for 3. Okay, but one really well explained one would be enough for an excellence if it's really well explained and really relevant. So I think it's good to aim for 2 or 3, because then you've got yourself, if one's not so strong, you might get by on the others. Okay, so explain 3 ways the impact of these theories has had the application of these theories has had an impact on wider society. All right, and so really what you're looking at here is an application of the theory in a different field or some different element of the real world. And that's where you're aiming for excellence. Right, if you're doing clinical psychology, then what you're going to do, your assignment here is going to be a little bit different. It's a little bit more independent research based. You're going to choose a psychological disorder you're interested in. All right, now then you have to explain how 2 or more psychological theories have been applied in developing treatments for that disorder. All right, so the disorders could be things like depression, PTSD, ADHD, anxiety, etc., etc. Here are some examples. Schema theory has been applied to develop schema therapy for depression, and the working memory model in looking at computer game treatments, so using computer games to help kids with ADHD, right, etc., etc. So you're looking at how have psychologists taken these theories of these psychological theories and applied them in the creating treatments to help people with psychological disorders. So you'll need to take 2 theories you've applied and so the first part really, this here is the part for achieved. Okay, explaining how 2 or more psychological theories have been applied in developing treatments for that disorder. Right, show you understand that and explain that. All right, so again, the focus is as much on the theory as it is on the therapy, as it is on the treatment, right? So you can explain what the treatment is, how it's used, and then make sure that you're explaining that it was based on the theory. Now, in order to get merit and excellence, you need to explain one way each theory has had an impact in clinical psychologies, right? And so one impact is it's helped develop theories, but you're going to look for one more impact in clinical psychology, one more effect, right? And I think, did I include a glossary down here? I did, right? I will finish the glossary for you. Sorry, that's not finished yet. Now, assess the effectiveness of the application of the theories. What you're doing here is you're assessing the effectiveness of the therapy that's based on the theory. So the application of the theory is the therapy, right? And so you're using studies to support your assessment. And this is where I recommend, you can find an experiment, a randomized controlled trial that shows, hey, this is effective, this therapy is effective. Maybe a meta-analysis, it goes and gives us a general view of the effectiveness. But you also want to show both sides, right? If a good assessment would look at, but any one therapy is not going to be 100% effective for treating a disorder. So you want to look at the other side as well. And then I've got here explain 3 ways the impact of these theories, the application of these theories has had an impact on wider society. So what you're looking at here is at least 1 or 2. One well explained would be enough for an excellence here. You're looking at one way the application of the theory has benefited some other field of psychology or some other aspect of the real world. okay? And so for things like the drug therapy, that should be kind of easy because that's had massive implications and impacts on the world, right? So yeah, all right. The application for treatment is 1 impact, find 2 more. Oh, okay, yep. So yeah, so you're looking at another 1 to 2 of a different impact of the theory on wider society. Okay, so and then again, this is our achievement criteria. If you're looking for achieved, discuss how 2 theories are applied within context in the field. So you're looking at theory 1, theory 2, explaining that. That's pretty simple for achieved. Okay, it's here where obviously it's going to get more and more complex as you get into the merit or excellence. I feel like this should be a very straightforward standard to gain and achieved. It's going to be one of the more difficult ones to gain excellence because of the application of theories in wider society. We're getting a little bit abstract here because theories are abstract to begin with, and then looking at the ways in which it might have had an influence in the real world can be a little bit tricky. But again, if you want to see the exemplar, then you can look at my How to Dad exemplar, and I've looked at, I did one that mirrored the creative and critical part, where I'm looking 3 strategies based on attachment theory and attachment styles, and I've added some annotations down the side here to show you what I've done, and then my critique, right? So the attachment theory critique here, the effectiveness, the impact in society, and then I've done that for both theories. Okay. Oh, I still need to finish that one. I haven't yet finished it. A lot of work here, not complete. It's only a merit, Mr. Dixon. Right, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. If you have questions, let me know.